Welcome to Forest Bathing, Nourishment in Uncertain Times, and this is the Nature-Based Sensory Invitations module. I'm Tia Ho, and in this module we'll be exploring elements for nature-based sensory invitations that we use in forest bathing and can be used at home. If you haven't already watched the video on the science foundations that explains a little bit about why this works to support health, you may want to watch that one before or after this one. In this module, we'll be working with our different senses and the structure of what's called the steps in the optimal flow, which is a different version of what's called the standard sequence. And it was developed by Amos Clifford, who founded the National Association of Forest Therapy, and who also wrote the book Your Guide to Forest Bathing, which I recommend if you want a starting point for exploring different invitations that someone else has written down, just as a way to have a little bit of a support when you're not immediately listening to this course or being guided by someone else. In this module, we hope you'll start to see more of the ways that this more than human world is always holding us and we are always in belonging with it, as this is one of the main elements of forest bathing, to rekindle that connection and help us start to see it a little more clearly every day as a way for us to be in reciprocal relationship with this larger system and all of the more than human world beings that are around us all the time. At the end of this video, you'll be able to recognize and experience how mindfulness is part of sensory practices, identify the structure and elements of a forest bathing invitation, and apply the 4 elements of an invitation, which include simple, sensory, wonder, and wander, to create your own invitations that you can practice in the backyard, a neighborhood, a park, or bring with you if you join us on a group walk. So, one element of forest bathing is that we end up utilizing a type of ceremonial practice. And it's a ceremonial practice in the sense that it is a very intentional decision we're making to connect with these growing, living ecosystems and environments around us in a way that isn't often done, at least not in the dominant system or dominant society. So a ceremony is just a fancier word for the word ritual, but it has a sacred dimension to it. So ritual is something like a repeated set of actions, or it can be a series of rules that are about establishing some sort of a relationship either among humans or between people and different objects, the material world. So this could be things like signing a contract, brushing your teeth, or even saying please and thank you. These are different types of rituals that we do pretty regularly. A ceremony goes beyond that in that it is still a ritual, but now it's done with the knowledge that there's a sacred connection beyond the material world. So it's really honoring, if you want to think about it this way, consciousness or life force or this bigger, more than worldly connection that connects all of us. And if you have a faith practice, that type of connection will have a specific meaning to you. This isn't connected to any specific type of religion, but many faith practices have ceremonies built in with them that have that same type of sacred feeling to them. And we're using ceremony here as also an invitation to be a community within whatever the practice is and with that practice. And one aspect of a ceremony here is that we're intentionally building a social emotional container. Containers, like it sounds, are supportive spaces that hold something. And we can think about a cup or a bowl as a container for liquid or items. And you might also think about your body as a container for the beating heart that's within you right now. A social emotional container is really a supportive container to help support our social relationships and any emotions that may arise while we're relating to one another. And you might recognize a really good social social emotional container from having been in a classroom where you felt really comfortable speaking up, or maybe you were in a circle dialogue and you knew that you could share something really personal and no one would laugh at you and no one would go and share that to some other person. It would stay within that special container. It's a very intentional process where we pay attention to one another, we prepare for it, and it's also a shared experience. In building the container, we also invite participation. In any good container you've been a part of, you helped cultivate that container. You were part of that contribution that made that space feel so good. And a container often has the building of a container often has a beginning, a middle, and a closing. So these courses are part of it. Not everyone will watch the course, so when we are all out on a guided walk, we will help build some of that when we're together as well. I just want to say thank you for participating in building this container. And part of this container is connected to the structure of a forest bathing walk. And we're using Steps in the Optimal Flow, adapted from Amos Clifford's book, Your Guide to Forest Bathing, because it can really help when you're brand new to this experience to have a straightforward starting spot. Every forest bathing guide is going to bring their own unique flavor and approach and even a flow that's unique to them, that helps provide a structure for you to engage with yourself and the forest bathing experience. And there will be homework as well that you can start to explore this on. These are the different steps to an optimal flow. And you can see the word ceremonially appears in a couple of places. This has a very much a beginning. It has a transition in. It has a main event, if you will, or the main experience of forest bathing, a transition out, and a closing. And I'm going to go over each one of these one by one. The very first thing we do when we decide that we're going to have a forest bathing or forest therapy experience is that we're setting an intention to do that. This is a simple way of inviting yourself and your mind. Some people might call it a mindset, where you're clearly marking the beginning of a new connection experience. Often people go into nature where they have a goal in mind, where they want to go for a hike and get a certain distance, or they want to go for a run, or they just want to visit with someone else. And that goal isn't actually about connecting to the forest or connecting to each other so much. It's just something else. So this one is very intentionally inviting your system to interact with the forest or whatever natural setting you're with as a form of connecting. You can basically invite in some type of an experience, and it doesn't have to be sophisticated. So maybe you'd like to feel some sort of ease today, or maybe your intention is simply to set your worries down and explore out in the woods or by the ocean, wherever it is you happen to be going. And in alignment with that, I'm just going to invite you right now to set an intention just for this next walk that you might do, or this next 5 minutes. I'm going to invite yourself to feel into the bottom of your feet. Maybe wiggle your toes if that feels good, and you can notice your body and mind coming into this place, into this video if you want. And I wonder if you can feel the sensation of the ground beneath your shoes, or beneath your socks if you don't have shoes on. Can you feel the ground gently moving, basically holding you? Can you feel the stability of that ground, the stability of gravity gently holding you to the earth? And if you haven't already been on a walk and you'd like to set an intention thinking into that future, you could do that right now. You could say it aloud. You could say it to yourself silently. You could write it down and then release it. And if it feels good, you can take 2 of the longest and deepest breaths you've taken today. One of the things you may end up choosing to do in this particular video is write down some invitations that you create yourself. And you can do that in a notebook, you can do it on index cards, and you can take these out with you and utilize them when you are in your backyard or if you go to a park. You can also just write them down and make a little audio file for yourself that you can listen to, so that you're giving yourself your own type of guidance. If you want to do that, you can write that down and you could give yourself the invitation, just like on that last slide, about setting an intention. And setting an intention isn't unique of forest bathing. It can be any time you want to take a pause from your day. I like to look at different pictures I've taken on my experiences out in nature, like this particular picture of sand by the ocean, and just let myself have a moment to just explore with my eyes some of the beauty that is always in life that's depicted in different images. After you set an intention for your forest bathing experience, then you transition into it. And this transition is really about entering an area of wonder. You could think about it as curiosity or the unknown. And it's re-entering that connection to the more than human world. And for some people, this might feel a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe it puts you into what we call the growth edge. So when you're comfortable all the time, you're actually not growing. And when you stretch a little bit, whether that's giving a new presentation or trying something new that you haven't experienced before, sometimes that unknown will feel a little uncomfortable. And this is also when growth and discovery are possible. So this is that borderline edge of discovery. And for an opening threshold applied practice, I'm just going to give you this little example. And again, if you want to do these on your own, you can also record yourself reading the slide to yourself and do them when you're out in your yard or something. I'm going to invite you to notice where you feel your breath most vibrantly. It might be that you can feel the air moving through your nostrils or the movement of your chest or back. Maybe you can feel your belly expanding. Wherever that sensation is for you, I'm just going to invite you to see if you can find it. And you don't have to change your breathing, you're just noticing it. You could just notice where you can feel it most vibrant. And we're entering a learning path together. This was a great spider that I got to meet when I went on a recent hike, and it was just there right next to the trail, and I loved seeing it suspended in its own web from this branch. And it really struck me as how cool it would be to be able to feel what this spider gets to feel every day. You know, maybe you can imagine that what it would be like for your body to just kind of move and stretch and gently be nudged lightly by the breeze moving against that spider web. And you can just let your body move or sway or stretch and feel what it might feel like to let your attention gently arrive there and feel that gentle support of that web and the breeze that this spider is experiencing on this path. The main piece of a forest bathing walk is a series of invitations. And these are sensory based. They can last between 5 minutes and 20 minutes. And they're about connecting to your experience through your senses. This is also where a lot of the mindfulness practices come in. So one of the elements you'll be looking for is pleasure. You'll be invited to utilize one or more of your senses and seek things that feel good to you. Seek things that feel pleasurable or delightful or have a sense of awe and wonder about them. And if something the guide says isn't intriguing to you, you are always invited to change it and make it yours and do something that might work best for you. So I've been on forest bathing walks where I really loved one particular invitation, maybe one of the very first ones in the series. And when the next invitation came along, I wasn't ready to let go of the first one. I was still really enjoying that first one, so I just kept doing the first one. And I didn't even try the second one. And that's okay. This isn't about having to do it a certain way. And if you're worried about doing it the right or the wrong way, I'm going to just assure you right now that however it is you do it is going to be the right way for you exploring that connection with the forest and all the senses that you get to feel supported by the more than human world. These invitations are, because they're sensory based, and if you end up watching the module all about research about how the forest bathing, how we think it works to support our health, that sensory support ends up helping you access nourishment, and it also increases your self-awareness. So you'll probably notice sensations and feelings and emotions as they arise. And doing this regularly, just like any mindfulness practice, helps expand your capacity to be with whatever you're feeling, including sensations that might be uncomfortable, without collapsing or feeling like you have to run from them. And you can allow yourself to feel one small bit of it at a time if it's uncomfortable. The other nice thing about forest bathing is that if something does feel uncomfortable, you can always stop. You can always utilize the great forest around you to help distract your attention. If, for example, you're out there and your mind starts to whirl into something maybe that's not actually happening there, it's happening back at home. And so you can use the support of the forest to help nudge your mind in a different direction. Regardless of how a forest bathing hike goes for you, I'm just going to invite you to allow yourself to set and maintain your own boundaries. You can trust that your body knows what works best for it. We've been conditioned to feel some sensations like grief, sadness, and anger as though those ones are the ones we should avoid. And when we attend and honor them, they move through without getting stuck. So it's this really counterintuitive thing where the more that you can support your system and integrate your experiences, the less sticky they end up being. Because I just brought up how the sensory supports can end up putting you in touch with different types of sensations and feelings and emotions that maybe were put away for a while, I just want to help discern the difference between safety and comfort and relative safety from absolute safety as a part of honoring what your knowing of what feels best to you. So as I mentioned, there's this what's called a growth edge, and we actually encounter this growth edge in lots of things we do in our life. And when we're at that edge is when we end up learning a lot of new skills, and it often doesn't feel comfortable. But that's partly because there can be some mental noise that comes up or even some stress. So for example, when I'm giving this talk and recording my voice, I feel a faster heartbeat, and there's some anxiety about which words are the right words or the wrong words, and it's uncomfortable. However, I'm actually very safe. I'm in my home. There isn't anyone around me. There isn't anyone directly saying or doing anything in my immediate experience. So while there's some discomfort, there's also safety. And one of the things about forest bathing is anything has its own inherent risks, and it's up to you to determine what you feel you're willing to explore and experience. There's relative safety, but there isn't really absolute safety. There isn't absolute safety in just about anything I can think of. Even in my house, I have fallen and hurt myself before, completely by myself, with my own challenges in terms of creating hazards for myself in terms of tripping. So I just want to make sure we make that distinction there, and you are reminded to honor what feels best to you and to change an invitation if it doesn't feel comfortable for you. This is also really great support and practice in the larger world when we're not forest bathing. So it can feel really uncomfortable to interrupt a microaggression or an ableist or a sexist comment, or even somebody asking someone to put on a mask when you're out and about during a pandemic. I had to do that recently in a classroom where someone wasn't actually wearing a mask, and I felt really uncomfortable, but no one else was speaking up. And I visit people who are at risk, so it's really important to me to make sure that I keep my own risk levels down in terms of COVID. And that meant in that moment I felt a little uncomfortable and took a risk, asking the person to put their mask on. And it was fine, they put their mask on. But this is just an example of the more that we can practice kind of setting these boundaries for ourselves and for our own comfort level, or maybe I should say risk level, since it's uncomfortable to set a boundary, the better and easier it is to do those in the future. Some of the safety principles we use is that before we go out on a hike, and I just invite you to do this too, is that you can check the location before each walk for hazards. You would check the weather, make sure you're not going out when it's icy or out in a storm. We follow COVID-19 protocols. In city parks, if you feel uncomfortable, you could always call a friend for support if it's needed, if you're out on your own, and have emergency numbers ready. We bring a first aid and a CPR kit with us, meaning I know a CPR kit sounds a little funny, but we have different things that we use for CPR, and both of us are first aid and CPR trained. You might consider going on a walk with a companion, whether that's a dog, a friend, or a group. Sometimes I have notified a park ranger of a group if we're all going to go together, even if we don't have to get a permit, so that they know. And if you end up getting to know different people, different park rangers and actual public agencies, and you feel more comfortable letting them know, that's one thing you can do. We always provide choice on the invitations on the walk, and it's something you can think about too, that you can choose different things to change up when you're out and about. And we start from the knowing that every person knows what's best for them and is guided from an inner knowing to be aware of what feels safest to you. And we also know that absolute safety is not possible. Everything has inherent risk. And so we try to inform people of expectations.